René Descartes is widely considered the founder of modern philosophy. And his importance for modern philosophy cannot be overstated. So it is appropriate that we start our study of modern philosophy with Descartes, René Descartes, a French philosopher. So he was born in, I think, 1596, and he died relatively young. Sorry, 1650. René Descartes. He's widely considered as the founder of modern philosophy. So we should be try to make, at least half a dozen videos about his. I'll try to keep the videos short so that it is easy to digest and understand. So there are a few things. Modern, so he's the founder of modern philosophy. So philosophy existed in medieval times, it existed in ancient times in different countries and communities and civilization, but we are talking about modern philosophy, and so the question would be what makes it modern, and we'll deal with that. So what's philosophy? Now philosophy, different civilizations have different conceptions of philosophy. So what is Descartes' conception of philosophy, and what modern conception of philosophy? And another thing is founder of philosophy. We refer to founders of philosophy in ancient Greek, but Descartes is unique in the sense that he is self-consciously starting something which he considered as something new, something, so he himself sees as a founder of some sort. So we will be looking at the meaning of founder and foundation and what entail in this context. Okay, so Descartes is basically living in 16th century, first half of 17th century. So he is founding a new philosophy entirely. But that doesn't mean that he's coming from nowhere. He's emerging out of a 16th century background. And that century is very important for revolutionary changes in European civilization, and those changes obviously affected Descartes and his conception of the world, even if he doesn't realize that or doesn't want to concede that. So, for example, I'll mention some figures which are important in this context. Some are, some lived prior to Descartes, the others are his, older contemporaries or almost his contemporaries. So, for example, Luther is very important. Luther and Protest, although Descartes comes from Catholic France and himself is Catholic, but his ideas, in some crucial sense, are the extensions of the ideas of Luther, but not in religious field, but in the field of philosophy. So, for example, I'll see that with Luther, he shared the sense of, a particular conception of reason, for example, subjective reason. I'll make some separate video on Luther, but here I just want to give you some idea. So Luther famously said that, in order to understand Bible, you don't need to be trained theologian, but any Christian can understand Bible using his or her own judgment. So this reliance on untrained reason, that's what I call subjective reason in this case. In the case of Luther, using your natural light and grace of God. In the case of Descartes, as we say, it's more using your natural light of reason. You can do philosophy. According to Luther, you can understand Bible, and that's why Luther, one of the most important thing Luther did was to translate Bible into German language. So ordinary Germans can understand Bible, and at the same time others who were either directly or indirectly influenced by Luther were translating Bible into other vernacular languages. For example, Tyndale, he translated Bible into English, and King James Version is ultimately based on some of his translation. And he famously, Tyndale, he was, I think, put to death or burnt alive for that, but he has famously said that his translation will make it possible so that a boy plying his field would be able to understand Bible better than many theologians. So it's this sort of environment in 16th century through which Luther is coming, and some of the ideas of Descartes will, are very similar, even though they are being applied to philosophy rather than religion. Another one is subjective reason, use of subjective reason. That's one thing he shared with Luther and others, even though he comes from the Catholic tradition rather than Protestant tradition. Another thing is the rebellion against institutions. And in the case of Luther, it is obviously a different context. He rebels against the Catholic Church, which is a universal church, and ultimately end up forming his own church, Protestant church, which is a nationalist church. In a different context, Descartes, for example, he rebels against institutional philosophy, which is, as we will see, Aristotelian, scholastic, Christian philosophy, which has a long, prestigious tradition. So in that sense, there's some parallel to Luther and Luther's movement against dominant institutions. Obviously, provide fruitful background for Descartes' rebellions against institutions as well. And one thing which actually differentiates him from Luther is, although Luther rebelled against institution, he was a monk and trained as a monk and a theologian, monk in the Augustinian tradition, and he was a university professor at Wittenberg. So Luther was actually based in an institution, so he wasn't a layman. But obviously he rebelled against institution from within. And although Descartes was trained in Jesuit educational institution, that's where, sorry, only one T. He had education there, but on the other hand, Descartes is a layman in the sense that he's neither a university. He's not based on a university. He's not a university professor, and nor a clergyman. So he's a layman in the full sense, and he's actually a gentleman. I mean, he worked in the army for a while, but he had enough money, So he didn't need to do anything. He didn't need to be reliant on institutions. So he rebelled against the institutional philosophy, but unlike Luther, he is not based in institutions. He is from outside. And he, wandered around in Europe, traveled widely, and he was basically, well, he was outside France when he was writing his main works. So, and another thing which is a parallel with Luther is, although both Luther and they are trained in, studied in the Catholic institutions and educational institutions, so they are well versed in Latin and both wrote books in Latin, but Descartes wrote some of his more popular works in French. And as we saw, Luther did the translation of Bible. So that's important. So I think when you work outside institutions, so you are well suited if you have to actually start something new, entirely new, because you are not constrained by institutional authority and tradition. Okay, so subjective reason. So these are parallel with Luther. Outside institutions, rebellions against institution, although their own situation was a bit different. And another difference with Luther is Luther ended up founding an institution, but Descartes himself didn't found any new institutions, although he gave birth to this huge and very important institution, which is called modern philosophy. We'll come to that in this video or the next video, but yeah, that's important. And third parallel, which is very important, is the rebellions against authority. So in the case of Luther, we are talking about church and its traditions, and all that come with it. But in the case of Descartes, he also rebels against authority. And that authority is institutional philosophy, and in institutional philosophy, the authority is Aristotle. But this is Aristotle read through the lens of Catholic tradition. So basically, it's a rebellion against the tradition of speculative philosophy, speculative reason. Just a minute. I think I missed some point. I was talking and I forgot to start the thing. But I have I think covered the main things. So Luther's ideas on subjective reasons and rebellions against institutions and rebellions against authority of Aristotle. That has created an environment which was very important for the success of Descartes' philosophy. And there were other people who were doing similar sort of work. Some were prior to Descartes, like Luther. So, for example, Montaigne, who is also from France. Some of his ideas can be seen as conducive to Descartes' sort of philosophy. Another person is Bacon, who is Francis Bacon. He is in Britain, and his philosophy, especially starting anew, and the rebellions against Aristotelianism and the emphasis on method, that gels well with Descartes' ideas, and could have created an environment for the. And the last but the not least is Galileo. He comes from a Catholic environment, Italy, Catholic like Descartes. His ideas obviously has a huge influence on physics, but also important in philosophy, especially as far as the method is concerned. So all this was very important for the success of Descartes' philosophy. So this is the background in which Descartes sort of started his quest to found. So he is the founder modern philosophy. So and we'll start the next video with this basic theme and continue what we have said in here. So we'll try to find what is his conception of modern philosophy and how we can consider him, how and why we consider him as the founder of modern philosophy. So I think that's enough for this video, and I'll start from where we are leaving in the next video.